hoping to find someone like you, like a summer breeze, a love to comfort me is all I need in my life, my life.
Satisfied, this heart of mine,
My heart.
I would search this world to find a woman like you. I would go to anywhere, just to find someone so rare, a woman like you.
I've been outside, and when the power goes off, it's really deathly quiet.
Darling, where was
My
I
bill was paid. Like,
when you made up your mind?
So I didn't.
Was there a chance for you and I?
I ain't even pay it.
There's
So,
something
I went
deep
outside and
inside
I saw my neighbor, the older
that keeps telling me I will never find someone like you, like the autumn leaves. What will change for me and bring her into my life, into my life?
This heart of mine,
My
I
heart.
would search this world to find a woman like
Oh,
you.
that is
I would go to anywhere,
Anywhere.
find someone so rare, a woman like you. Like you.
There will never, never be another
Like you.
but I search until I find a lover.
Like you.
It would mean the world to me. Oh, who's gonna make it come true? Will it be someone like you?
They have to shut down the power of but when you're at home, you're out there, the one in like a
Satisfied, this heart of mine, I would search this world to find a woman like you. I would go to anywhere, just to find someone so rare, a woman like you. Satisfied, this heart of mine, I would search
I had to go and
this
check
world
the
to
Wi-Fi.
find a woman like you.
Those things had make me nervous about the apocalypse. When these kinds of things happen, I just feel so helpless and vulnerable.
let me tell you, they have, and when you hear that Russia and China are putting energy devices up in space, where they could actually cause EMPs.
Oh, that space garbage never works. Harry.
his struggle. Come back and land. So they can't
how many bottles did I pop up on the
but almost as amazing as the Rockets can actually come back and land on that. Pretty amazing.
I didn't even like to watch King Harry in the whole season. It kind of gets you all the way up. You gotta hold on. This video. Losing control Oh God, no, I'm not. No.
Now we get to really page.
Nope. I'm done.
You sound like baby. I'm done.
Done.
Amazing. I mean, Baba, I'm done. I'm done with you. I'm done.
That little girl has a mind of her own. It's her own. Where she learned that from? She must have heard it from somewhere. She had to.
I don't know. This nobody says it.
It's a cartoon. She watched cartoons. They probably say that her favorite cartoon. She overheard her mama talking to her friends. You know what I mean? Like, over here, you spy like grown-up conversations.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess there was like, what's on? I want to see them on Facebook. And then Daisy goes, Bobby, I'm done. Daisy comes to the, I'm done, Bobby.
What are you going to do, drag her?
Daisy goes through, I think,
What did we see that?
She's not
Wow, that's what happens, Harry. You know, they're taking it running to the next level. She on some other next level stuff. That you built that. I built that. I know. That's why you gotta undo that handiwork. Now you gotta like, you know, get her to be like, These kids ain't no joke, man.
My daughter will be naked. It's impossible for a child to do that, but she has that
Oh my God! If she's like this, tell your daughter she better back some steel around her heart for that one. Shit. That one's gonna break your heart and not even there. She's already like, I'm not talking to you for a whole day, and you drink, and you in my space, and
his 30s to understand you can't do that. So,
Harry, save that child 30 years.
I hope not.
Save her 30 years, Harry. Sit down and give her the talk. Like, listen, Daisy, you cannot. This is you don't want to be like that.
You go, Papa, I'm done. Done listening.
You done with what, Daisy? What?
Listen.
No, you're not. Let me tell you why. Because you hear me right now.
Be like Daisy, go to your room.
Oh, like that's not punishment, right? Like. That's right. Like I'm waiting. I'm sitting here waiting for you to say, go to your room. The next time, you know what you do? Sit there on the damn couch in the living room. Oh my God. That one right there. It's perfect for president. I think she's a hammer.
So your guest comes on at
10:15. Why is it? Are they in the chat room?
Hi, this is Babz Rawls-Ivy from New Haven. You're listening to NHLP 103.5 FM, streaming live at newhavenindependent.org.
Right, back at it. Yeah, so he's gonna come on and we're gonna have a good conversation about what their organization does. I should pull up my notes on that. So yeah, I mean, you know, what are you gonna do? So I think tonight, Harry, I'm gonna try to cook one of my Hello Fresh meals. I haven't cooked them. I haven't started them yet. So maybe tonight I'm gonna cook one.
Did you get any of the tinctures or oils from Wepa?
I got the body butter.
Body butter.
I got body butter, gummies, and the joints.
And the cannabis.
So I'm trying to think about when I'm gonna smoke the smoke because I don't know if I smoked any hemp. So I'm imagining it'll be the same kind of vibe as the gummies. It'll just chill me out.
Yeah, it's the same. It's relaxing. You feel the inflammation go down in your body. So yeah.
Okay.
Good
Okay.
stuff.
Okay. I like that. Well, I'm looking forward to it. How about that? Yeah, and you know what? I'm gonna go online and get my damn card too, Harry. I'm tired of messing around.
Yeah. I finally posted that Monica Mingo video.
Yes, I saw it. I posted it up because I knew it wasn't up because I didn't see it.
Well,
and I was looking for it.
I think what you posted was, yesterday I posted the podcast.
I just got, that's what I got. I saw the SoundCloud, right?
Yeah, but today I posted the video.
Oh, good. Then I'll send that around too because I didn't see it. I like when we break them up, Harry, because it just makes it so much easier. So, you know, when I have these multiple guests, they can have their own.
Well, I had to break it up because Paul now has some people looking at your interviews and doing stories. So
Yeah, which is nice.
so you know, it's more difficult for them to actually find the location where the interviews start and everything. So, and it's hard to post into the story. So
Yeah.
so there you go. More work for Harry.
Working with me, Harry, can't be like hard work.
Oh, now I know.
Are you trying to say it's hard work working for me, Harry? Okay. I didn't think so.
It's just work. Nothing's hard. It's either time consuming or it's not.
Well, and you know, my last thing, you know what? I think Chris Wallace should not have been moderating by himself. You know what? You know how this would go better, Harry, if they had comedians moderating these things. Like if you had like,
You know, I think we shouldn't have moderators. Just let them go at each other.
no, then it'll be a fight, Harry.
Two old men.
Harry, listen, when he was talking about his son, when he started going on about the late Bo Biden, I thought he was gonna come around that damn. I was like, that because you know, talking about somebody's dead child is like talking about somebody's mother, right? Like back in the day, Harry, if somebody would have said your mama, and no matter what, whatever they said after that, you wouldn't have heard it. You would have just been throwing some joints.
I missed that though. He spoke about his child.
Well, yes, because he said, you know, not for nothing, people that serve in the military are not
Well, he talked about
losers.
Hunter.
Whatever son served in the military.
But they both served in the military.
But the one that died, Bo was the one that died, right?
Bo was the one that died.
So he's talking about Bo. So so there was that exchange back and forth, and I almost thought Biden was gonna come around that podium and put some whoop ass.
They would get exhausted just trying to get to the middle to meet each other.
I was like,
80 years old.
he gonna come. Listen, Harry, when somebody's talking cash-ish, age is nothing but a number. Because I don't care how old you are, Harry, there's a few things that'll make you whoop somebody's ass.
Actually, you can.
I don't care. Listen, if he would have, he 80-something years old, however old he is, if you talk about his mama and his dead kids, listen, that'll get your ass whooped. I don't care who you are.
Speak about the dead son, but you know, it's interesting though that the way it went, it was just so
crazy.
It was crazy, but it felt like the moderator was in the way. Like you should let them go at it. It just wasn't enough for me.
Harry, you that's too much reality TV, Harry. I thought it was awful.
I prefer UFC match.
Although I would have preferred some opening statements. Like I think some opening statements to set a tone, because I think you had nowhere to go. You know what I mean? Like if everybody would have set a tone, like this is what I'm gonna talk about. This is what I want the American people to know. They didn't get a chance to do that.
Yeah, this way, if you get lost in the fog of the
debate,
you know what they started with.
Yes, and I just felt like it was just too. And I think Chris Wallace was in over his head.
Well,
but I think he's like. I mean, Donald Trump is like that everywhere he goes,
right,
even with the fight with everybody. So this is the thing that kills me with these people. He would have agreed to anything to get on that stage and then just do whatever he wanted to do. Exactly. So I don't understand why they think that he's gonna play by some rules now.
Right? He's like, sir, you agreed to these rules.
He's like, F the rules.
What are you talking about, Chris?
Wait, this is my favorite thing, Harry. He was like, did you see him do that? He was like,
He's like, I needed to agree to those rules to get on this stage, Chris.
That's right. Harry, and I'm thinking to myself, people are suckers.
You know
They
what's
just
the
fall
funny
for that
part?
man.
You know what's the funny part? Is that Chris Matthews felt bad every time he interrupted him. You know, he's like,
Chris Cooper. Chris, what's his name? Chris Wallace.
Chris Wallace. He said, I'm sorry for raising my voice, sir, but you're not following the rules.
Wait. No. Here's a question you're gonna like.
I like this one, so don't interrupt.
Hey, Harry, you know, this is like when you see white women in grocery stores with their children trying to reason with them because they're on the ground squirming and carrying on and throwing a fit.
Yep.
You never see that with black children. Have you ever seen it, Harry? Black and Latino children. You've not seen it.
I always go, imagine that. Imagine one of my kids are thrown on the floor and they call me a bitch or something. That would be the end of them. I brought you in, I take you out.
And make another one look just like you. Harry, they needed like Medea or Big Mama, or they needed like a mama up there on that stage, right? Like they needed mama because they was just out of control.
Yeah,
I was like,
well, he was definitely like, I don't know if you remember in 2016 when Megyn Kelly was
oh yes.
She controlled it and she drove him nuts. You know,
but you know what? He's a sucker for a pretty face. Can we go to a music break and see if our guest, because somebody rang my doorbell. So I need to go answer my door.
We'll be right back. Listening to LoveBabz Love Talk on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Wheels keep spinning till the morning light. Wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning till the morning light. Wheels keep spinning, wheels keep spinning.
Woo! Good morning, beautiful people. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy. Welcome back to the second part of my morning on LoveBabz, LoveTalk. So I'm happy to have as my guest this morning. Good morning, guest. How are you, Monty Frank? Unmute yourself. You got to unmute yourself. You see
There we go. Good morning, Babz. Good morning, Harry. Harry, I'm disappointed you don't remember me. I've been on the show with Paul probably 3 or 4 times, and
yes.
You're always there greeting me and pretending to listen intently.
Well, now that I see you, I remember you.
All right, good.
That better.
I'm with you on that one.
Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's good to be here. I got some important stuff to talk about.
You do.
A lot happening.
So everybody, this is Monty Frank, who is the Connecticut chair, or the chair of the Serve America movement of Connecticut. And you're here to talk about, you've distributed a questionnaire to the elected folks here in Connecticut, asking them to respond to 4 questions about key election and democracy reforms proposed by Sam Connecticut. But before we get there, I'm sure everybody knows what Sam is, but tell everybody what Sam is first. And then tell me a little bit about you, Monty Frank.
Yeah, sure.
You stepped into this chair role.
Well, after the election, I ran for lieutenant governor in 2018 with Oz Griebel, who was my running mate. Mm-hmm. And during the course of the election, we were introduced to a group called SAM, a national group, the Serve America movement, that aligned perfectly with what Oz and I were talking about, in that, we have a political system that's dominated by 2 parties. There's this duopoly that's more interested in preserving themselves than representing we the people. And as a result, we have this hyper-partisanship, tribal politics, where everything just gets magnified to such a degree that the political system has failed us. It's failed the people of New Haven. It's failed the people of Connecticut. It's failed us nationally in driving results for us in ways that will move the country, our families, our businesses forward. So that was essentially why SAM was formed. And if there's any need to really understand how important SAM is in the movement that is growing, if you spent 3 seconds tuning into last night's debate before you turned it off.
Oh my God.
That's Exhibit A. I mean, that's the fulcrum of all of these divisions, these tribal politics, culminating in a debate where there was virtually no policy being discussed. There were no solutions being proposed. There were some by Joe Biden, but it seemed to get drowned out by.
So, Monty, are you a part of a party? Do you identify with the party? I mean, how does that work? If there's a 2-system party, what's the 3rd party or the 4th party?
Oz and I, when we came together, I had been a Democrat my entire life. Oz had been a Republican. Oz ran for governor in 2010 as a Republican. And we came together as a former Democrat and former Republican and as unaffiliated voters, which is the largest voting bloc in Connecticut and nationally, and growing because people are getting disgusted with the 2 parties. And so we ran this fusion ticket focused on problem solving rather than on this left-right axis of ideological debate where, as Oz always used to say, it's my dogma versus your dogma. So we formed, without knowing anything about SAM, essentially the same idea, which is it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, unaffiliated, former Democrat, former Republican. We're looking to get the best and the brightest into this movement focused on problem solving rather than on this ideological axis on the left-right, which creates wedge issues and divisions rather than bringing people together for a compromise and solving problems. So Sam has developed this whole program about injecting competition and choice into the failing political system, and eventually to, we are, I wouldn't call us a third party. I'd say we're a new party that is being built in order to serve the majority of people who are tired of this tribal politics and self-serving politics that doesn't solve any problems for the people of either Connecticut or nationally.
Okay, so how do you do that? Have you figured that out?
Well, it's we've got a lot of smart people involved, and we've got a lot of people both at the grassroots level and at the top level working together to try to build this movement out. So, if you look at what Sam has done since it was founded in 2017, right after the election, ran candidates for governor in New York. Oz and I ran in Connecticut and then joined Sam. They've achieved statewide party status in New York. Eventually, we're going to be looking to do that in Connecticut. They ran over 50 candidates, Sam candidates in the 2018 election in New York. We have the Connecticut Task Force, which I'm happy to talk about. We have 60,000 plus followers across 50 states. We've been raising money. We've had extensive earned media across major news outlets. We've hired a chairman in David Jolly, who was a former Republican congressman who left the party because realized that the being unaffiliated and part of this Sam movement would better serve our country and drive us to a place where we can start solving some of the major problems that Connecticut has. So, so that's what we've been doing nationally. On the statewide level, as I said, we've got this task force of people from diverse backgrounds.
And when you say diverse backgrounds, what do you mean? Because I'm very much interested in people who are about anti-racism work. So
yeah, I mean, we have on our task force racial and ethnic minorities, pastors, community activists, people who are interested in helping kind of drive change. I mean, during the election, Oz and I were more progressive on many of the issues that are important to the Black, Brown, Hispanic communities than
what?
Well, we were the first campaign that I've ever seen in Connecticut that actually had a diversity and inclusion policy that called for implicit bias training, that had a criminal justice package that talked about real criminal justice reforms, talked about implicit bias training for those in law enforcement. We spent a lot of time in Bridgeport, New Haven, Hartford. I spent a lot of time talking with folks in Black and brown churches, meeting with community leaders. And what I heard was, you're not one of these typical politicians where every 4 years you're going to come around and ask for my vote, and then we're not going to see you for another 4 years. And I said, no, I mean, that's not who we are. And we kept coming back. And Carl McCluster, for example, is on our task force. He is a pastor down in Bridgeport at the Shiloh Baptist Church. I remember one of the first things I did after the election was, after we lost, I went back to one of the Black churches in Bridgeport where I spent some time. And Pastor McCulloch saw me in the back, brought me up to the front row, looked at me and said, "Mr. Frank, the election's over. Why are you here?" And my response was just to say thank you, that I appreciated all that the community had done for me to try to get our message out, and that we're not going away, that we're going to continue to work within the communities. And Sam is going to continue to grow because the two-party system is not representing adequately the people in our communities. And that's true not just of the urban communities, but certainly of the suburbs as well. This country is not doing well in terms of trying to solve problems that everyday people face.
So Monty, how do you, I mean, I think organically people are starting to understand that, and intellectually there's a great many people that understand that. How do you sort of build a movement? How do you build momentum for people to sort of use their vote differently outside of this Democrat, Republican, independent mindset? How do you do that?
Well, I think people need to learn about us. But if you look at our vision, right? It's, you know, one of the things we like to say is our vision isn't just possible; it's inevitable. And why do I say it's inevitable? If you look at the polling data, 61% of Americans support a new major political party. 61%. That's the highest Gallup has ever recorded. So what does that tell you? You know, 40 some odd percent of Connecticut voters are unaffiliated. That's true across the country. That number is growing. They're becoming unaffiliated because they are sick and tired of the lack of adequate representation by the political parties, who are more interested in building a system and maintaining a system that keeps their jobs, that keeps them in place, that keeps their power, rather than solving the major problems that we have in this country around. I mean, pick an issue: gun violence, pandemics,
and
immigration.
And gun violence is one that is near and dear to you. Like you do things in support of trying to raise awareness around gun violence and laws around, you know, who who shouldn't.
I'm an attorney. I lived in Sandy Hook. I represented the town of Newtown following the shooting. You know, my daughter lost her third grade teacher in the shooting. So that caused me to become an activist around gun issues. And now I'm on the standing committee of gun violence of the American Bar Association. I'm working on policy, and I lead this thing called Team 26, where every year we ride from Newtown down to Washington on bicycles to honor the 20 children and 6 educators who lost Sandy Hook and all victims of gun violence, but to raise awareness about the problem. We stop in Trenton and Baltimore. We ride through the parts of Washington that a lot of people go down to Washington to advocate for gun violence, choose to ignore. But we spend a lot of time there talking about gun violence not just being a mass shooting suburban issue, but really being an issue that affects our cities. You know, I spent a lot of time in Baltimore, and where gun violence is an everyday occurrence, as it is in Hartford. And you know, while the mass shootings get a lot of the publicity, the daily parade of gun violence in our cities needs equal attention, and it's just not. And that's, I think, a real failure of our government to implement some measures around gun violence that would actually start bringing down the levels of gun violence and solving problems.
Well, I think that speaks to just systemic racism, and as long as the majority of the gun violence happens in urban centers, then it's not a problem for anybody else to be concerned about. I mean, I think. Well,
but I think the mass shootings that we've seen, I think undermines that point, because, and this is I think a good analogy for us to talk about why SAM is so important, right? If you look at the polling data, more than 90% of Americans favor closing the loophole on background checks. There's nothing that polls that high. If you were to poll how many Americans like ice cream, it would not be that high. So, reducing gun violence and closing that loophole around background checks is more popular than ice cream or baseball in this country. And yet you have a Congress that refuses to act, despite these overwhelming majorities, because there's no sense of compromise, that the parties have become so tribal that they've got to, particularly the Republican Party, they've got to say, if I support gun violence prevention measures, I might get primaried. and if they get primaried, then they're going to lose their seat. So one of the things that we talk about at SAM is the real need for more competition in our electoral process. Mm-hmm. And so that's what the survey goes to. Those 4 things, if they were to be implemented, would immediately cause our governments to behave better, because there would be some accountability, some transparency, and real competition in our process that would only, it happens in every other part of our country.
So is this survey part of a national survey too? Like, is this going out, or is this just unique to Connecticut?
Well, there are 2 things there. We have a survey that with the 4 questions that's going out to every candidate for the state house, both the House and the Senate in Connecticut. On a national level, there's a scorecard that we are going to be using to evaluate candidates along the real pillars of SAM, which we want from our elected officials around transparency, accountability, their commitment to electoral reform, and their commitment to real problem solving. And that's really the core of SAM. You know, if you look at the way parties operate, they provide you with the answers, right? This is how you are to think about gun violence or immigration or taxes. And if you're a member of the Republican Party, or the Democratic Party, if you divert from those answers, from those platforms, then you're going to be called out on it. And if you're in Congress, you know, your bills that would help your constituents are not going to get called to the floor and not going to get passed. So they keep you in line. With SAM, we talk about what is the process. How can we get people engaged about arguing about how to fix things rather than arguing about how to divide us? And that's what the scorecard gets to.
And it sounds pretty straightforward. Like, it sounds like, oh, I can get behind that. It sounds quite logical. It makes sense to me. I want my government to perform better and to behave better. And then here we are.
Right. And here we are. And that's why, you know, we're really looking to unrig the system, where we're building this political party that starts with questions. What are the questions? You know, what are the things for the people of New Haven or Bridgeport that need to be solved? You know, if you look at Bridgeport and you look at the massive opportunity gaps, why is that? Right? Because unless you ask the questions and you have the discussions around the questions, you can't solve the problems. And if you have active members of our legislature asking those questions, instead of being told, you're a Democrat, this is what you have to do, that you're a Republican, this is what you have to do. And so everybody lines up on each side. They have their line. They have their line in the sand. They will never cross it. The other side has a line saying they'll never cross it. There's no compromise. There's no meeting in the middle. And who suffers? The people do. So, you know, again, when I go back to the discussions I've had in Bridgeport and New Haven and Hartford, every 4 years, the elected officials, they come around, they ask for a vote, and then they go away. They have really nice things to say, but nothing seems to change. You know, if you ask people in Bridgeport whether the opportunity gaps have gotten smaller or larger over the last 10, 20 years, I think most people will say they've gotten larger. That, you know, the healthcare inequities, the transportation problems, the housing problems, the gun violence, the inadequate education systems have all gotten worse. And that's led to a larger opportunity gap entirely based on your zip code. So what are the questions that would allow a dialogue to occur where there could be some compromise to find solutions? And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to design a system that would deliver the most good to the most people and fix a system that has been corrupted by mainstream parties and the people who prop them up through the campaign finance laws, the electoral process. You know, and I think back to the 2018 election. Oz Griebel, who is my friend, who I got to know very well, may have been the best candidate Connecticut has seen for governor in 20 years. He incredibly smart, incredible amount of integrity, is a problem solver, willing to think outside the box, new policy backwards and forwards. And yet we were not able to get him over the hump in order to get elected. Notwithstanding that the Hartford Courant endorsed him, and there's a lot of grassroots support, because people have this notion, well, if I vote for Oz, I'm throwing my vote away. So the process we're trying to develop would allow real electoral competition. So that wasted vote, the lesser of two evils kind of scenario that we see over and over again, won't ever occur. Mm-hmm. And that's what these electoral reforms get to. And if we were able to do that, what we've seen in other parts of the country would occur here. They're not difficult concepts. They're very easy to do. It will be difficult to get them through the legislature because it may threaten some jobs in the legislature. Mm-hmm. But that's a good thing. That's good for the people of Connecticut to be able to say, we're going to put in some real competition for our electoral systems and not be dictated by what the parties are telling us. And if we're able to do that, then that'll inure to all of our benefits.
Mm-hmm. And so how long have you been working at this?
Well, we obviously, I ran for lieutenant governor with Oz, and then coming out of the election, I remember having
2018.
I remember having a conversation with Pastor McCluster, and he said to Oz and me towards the beginning of our relationship, there are a lot of people who are interested in what you are proposing. That the notion that we can try to build a new kind of party around compromise. Bringing people together is something that's very attractive. I want to make sure that, after the election, you're just not going to go back to the Democratic Party or Oz you back to the Republican Party, that this is going to be sustainable. And we both said, no, we're committed to this. So it really came out of the election. Oz then took over as chair of SAM Connecticut and started building up the task force. And, with his passing, I've now stepped into his role. And boy, there are big shoes to fill, but we've got a good group of people that are working hard on this. Mm-hmm. And if people want to get more information, they can go to joinsamct.org or on the national level, joinsam.org. And hopefully they'll put their name in and volunteer and help us build this from the bottom up.
So have you heard back from anybody from the 4 questions? And can I read the 4 questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Number 1, Connecticut should abandon, this is before you get to on the 4 election reforms. Connecticut should abandon partisan primaries and move to a single taxpayer-funded, nonpartisan primary in which all candidates and all voters participate. Yes or no? What does that mean?
So in Connecticut, if for a primary, the parties run the primary, they run the candidates. You have to be a member of that party in order to vote in the primary. Mm-hmm. And out of the primary, you have a candidate that you have a Democratic candidate, a Republican candidate that then goes to the general election. As taxpayers, 100% of the taxpayers in Connecticut are paying for that primary, even though 40+% of the electorate are unable to vote in that primary. So it's essentially, it's public financing of private primaries. Doesn't make sense. So what open primaries would do, and there are different ways you can do it, is all of the candidates who are running for a particular seat would be in the primary. It'd be one primary. All candidates in, all voters get to vote. And so in California, for example, they have top 2 primaries. So all candidates are in, all 100% of the voters get to vote, regardless of party affiliation. And the top 2 come out. So you could conceivably have 2 Democrats in the general election, 2 Republicans, an independent and Republicans, or a Republican, or various scenarios. But what it does is it provides an opportunity for everyone to be able to vote who they get to then goes to the general election. But it forces people to moderate their positions. You're not going to, in most cases, you are not going to get to the general election if you are simply trying to appease the fringes of the party. And that's a major difference. And so what they've seen in California is, one, because they do this in all their races, the state house in California has become a model of good governance, where there is compromise, where there are bills being passed that benefit people within the state. Now, there was some criticism that, well, there may not be an opportunity under that system for racial and ethnic minorities. But what they've seen is just the opposite, that people like Kamala Harris have gone through this system and emerged through it very successfully. So that initial reaction has been flipped, and it's actually an asset. But if we had top 2 open primaries or top 4 open primaries in Connecticut, everyone would vote for all the candidates. You would end up with a moderating of positions, because people would have to appeal to more than just their extreme right or extreme left base. It forced more people into the middle. If you force more people into the middle, it allows for greater compromise and accountability in your elected officials when they're actually in office.
Second question. Connecticut should adopt ranked choice voting to ensure that winners of all elections have the support of a majority of voters and not a simple plurality.
So, open primaries and ranked choice voting, those are the big 2. Maine now has ranked choice voting. New York City passed by referendum that some of their elections will have mass ranked choice voting. California uses ranked choice voting. So what it essentially is, it's an automatic runoff. So it guarantees that whoever wins that spot will have more than 50% of the vote, which is, in a lot of situations, a rarity. Ned Lamont didn't have 50% of the vote, didn't come close to it. Donald Trump didn't have 50% of the vote, didn't come close to it. So we are electing officials by pluralities when they really should be by majorities. And how does this work? If I go into the election with a ranked choice voting system, let's say there are 4 candidates running for that spot, hopefully in an open primary type situation, I would rank those candidates 1, 2, 3, 4. And if the number 1 candidate out of the box has 50% of the vote, that's the winner. But that's not likely to happen. So you just keep having an automatic runoff, and it's done very easily until the person gets 50% of the vote. What does that do? It forces people to play nice in the sandbox again. Because if you are out there throwing grenades, you may satisfy a small percentage of the electorate that may have gotten you elected in the past. But if you alienate a large group of the people, you're not going to get any number 2 or number 3 votes. So without those number 2 and number 3 votes that get reallocated through the runoff process,
you won't get to your 50%.
You're not going to get to the 50%. And so again, it's another tool that we could use to promote competition, but it really forces people to moderate in ways that appeal not just to their base, but to really kind of search out, what is it that my state or my district needs? What are the real concerns within my district, not my party, my district? What do the people really want? And start, asking the questions and working with your constituents to come up with answers that appeal to the most people. And that's how you win. And by the way, and if you govern in that manner, then you're going to keep getting reelected until we get to the term limits part, because we do think that term limits ought to be part of this equation.
And here's the question. Connecticut should adopt term limits for our 6 constitutional offices of governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state, treasurer, and comptroller, and for all state, Senate, and House of Representative seats.
Yeah, and again, this goes to.
But do we really want people revolving out of these roles every
I
2
think
years, every 4 years,
if we develop a system where there's real competition in elections, I think it's important that we have new voices and new ideas and new people coming up the ranks who represent a whole different constituency. You know, right now, we have a very active, our youth have become very active in politics. Mm-hmm. And yet they have, I think they are trying to influence a lot of people, but they don't have representation in the body politic in ways that can really develop policy. They have to go through someone else. If there were term limits and there was real electoral competition, open primaries, ranked choice voting, then there'd be more opportunities for more people to serve our country and pose those questions and provide answers based on what they're seeing with within their own generation. I think it's critical that we, again, if we put the term limits in, it will help promote competition. Mm-hmm. And you know what, if somebody's been in the state house for 30 years, those things they can take that experience and go work for a nonprofit and help a nonprofit develop good policy. I mean, obviously there needs to be, more control on the revolving door, and that's part of our scorecard, so that, they don't immediately leave and go work for, sit out the year, work for a lobbying organization and use their influence that way. But with, having more competition, having people leave and go do good things based on their experience, or run for a different office, I think is real valuable.
And the last question, Connecticut should adopt a vote by mail option that is secured against potential abuse and fraud for all federal and state elections. But don't we have that already?
We do not.
Oh.
We have it now, only because of COVID, based on the governor's executive order. Mm-hmm. We could easily move to a system like Oregon has, where it's 100% by mail, and they've been doing it safely, securely for a long period of time, and it enables more participation in the democratic process, which is what you want. I mean, the turnout in Connecticut and elsewhere isn't what it should be in a democracy. If you can enable processes like vote by mail, why not? It will make it easier for people to vote. You can do it securely, and it will allow for, again, for our elected officials to be there with having been elected there by a larger majority of people.
Mm-hmm. And so, what do you make of this conversation now around the sitting president casting doubt on mail-in ballots, and people sort of feeling some kind of way about that, as if somehow or other they never thought about it before, or they had no idea that this was a real concern, which I don't think it is, but people are feeling like it might be.
Our democracy is in trouble. We have a Congress that at this point in time is not a particularly serious organization. They are not solving problems that everyday Americans need to have solved. Mm-hmm. Our president is abusing his power, and his attack on the voting process, his threats that he's not going to leave the White House, that it's all going to be challenged by the courts, where he knows he has more influence, is a real problem. Mm-hmm. And it really highlights the need for the democracy reforms that Sam is pressing.
Well, Monty, do you feel like, because I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, the United States of America is a very new government, right? We're a new country, and as opposed to other places. And so maybe this is our opportunity to decide if democracy is what we really want. Maybe this is opportunity for people who have not really given democracy a thought to really step up and say, you know what, I want to live in a democratic country, and this is what it's going to take for me to sort of have that. I mean, do you feel like that? I mean, I feel like that. I feel like this is a put up or shut up moment for Americans. No matter where you are, you have to decide, what do you want this country to be?
Look, my mother survived the Holocaust. My grandparents met on a train fleeing Poland when the Nazis came in, and but for the grace of God, I wouldn't be here. And many of my mother's family were killed at Auschwitz. The thought of living in a place that is not a democracy, where the rights are protected, is a really scary notion to me. Our democracy right now is being tested.
Mm-hmm.
And
Monty, do you think that people understand what democracy is? Because I just feel like I don't think a lot of people understand what democracy means.
I think people took our democracy for granted for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
What we saw during the Obama administration is that, while we were all striving for the more perfect union, to provide more opportunity for more people, and to have Obama in the White House, and I spent some time in the White House with the Obama administration working on gun violence. There are some people who are just not happy about that and are looking to disrupt our democratic process. And what we are seeing now is all of that kind of politics of fear and hatred really rising to the surface and testing our.
So when you say, you mean they just didn't appreciate they just hated the fact that there was a black man sitting in the White House in the Oval Office? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, and that's part of it. And I think part of it is that we took our democracy for granted, created an environment that allowed someone like Donald Trump to become elected by using politics of fear. And as a result of that, we're at a point now where it's going to take some effort by American people to restore the democracy to what it was and really reform democracy so that we can continue the progression towards a more perfect union. And, part of that is unrigging the political system. And this is not a new idea. If you look back to the founding of our country, George Washington warned us about having two parties, that at some point in time, he said, the two parties would care more about their allegiance to the party rather than to the country. And
we are seeing that. Although we are seeing this in spades. So I'd like to have you come back, Monty Frank, and let's have more conversation around this. Because I think for this particular audience, I think you've laid out what your organization is doing, what you're doing. And now I think we could have a bigger discussion about how history and where we are now is sort of giving us clues about the demise or the sustaining of this democracy.
Yeah, I'm glad to come back. Just let me know when, and this is a long conversation, and I'd love to continue having it. In the meantime, we encourage all those running for office to fill out the questionnaire. They've all seen it.
And where can they see it? Is it online?
It's all been emailed to them.
Oh, okay. All right.
So they all have it. We've gotten about 20 responses so far. We'd like to have more of that. We're going to publish the results, and for those interested who are running, who want to be endorsed by us, we're going to be endorsing candidates who line up with the pillars of SAM. And the pillars are simple. It's about problem solving, electoral reforms, and competition, accountability, and transparency. Those are the things that we want out of our elected officials. And if they're willing to pledge to those principles, they'll get our endorsement.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I
Glad to be
appreciate
here.
you.
I appreciate it.
Harry, I've kept us on track, so we're on our way out. But we'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll see y'all. Thank you, Monty.
Take care. Peace.